From the heart of Orlando, Florida, a place where the tangerines are just so juicy. You are listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I am your neighbor, David Gornoski, and welcome again. Welcome to my neighborhood here in Florida. So glad you could join me once again. I am excited about this show. This is going to be another adventure, another learning excursion, a time in which we will come together as neighbors. We'll put aside all those outdated ideas based on groupthink and focus on courage, the courage to rethink outdated ideas that don't solve us. Ideas that are based on bureaucrats and power plays and cronies trying to keep their piece of the pie still going. We're not going to be interested in those ideas here. At A Neighbor's Choice, we are about getting things done. And we have a jam-packed show because tonight I'll be speaking with Amy Povah. She is a great friend of mine, and she is the founder of Can-do Foundation. She was one of the leaders behind that beautiful clemency that got all kinds of attention, where Kim Kardashian and others were able to help Alice Johnson receive clemency from President Donald Trump. She was one of the figureheads behind the scenes helping to push momentum for her for many years. And so she's going to tell us about her work in that area, as well as other things that she's involved in to help many other people like Alice Johnson, who are in prison sometimes for life for a nonviolent, victimless act. And so we'll be speaking with her. And we'll also be speaking once again with my friend, Dr. Weiping Yu, one of the top physicists at Kennedy Space Center here just right down the road from where I am live right now. He'll be speaking about some groundbreaking insights that he has learned, things that even have to apply to medicine and disease that he has learned through his discoveries in physics. Again, Dr. Yu is someone who is rethinking the boundaries of what's acceptable opinion within the narrow confines of outdated groupthink. And so together, we're going to say no to fear. We're going to say no to blame games. I know each of us have people in our lives that always encourage us. They build us up, and they're there for us when we don't believe in ourselves. And we need to take time to think about those people. And if there's someone right now, I'm sure there's someone you can think of in your life who, when no one else believed you could do it, when no one else believed you could win the game, when no one else believed that you could accomplish what you did in your work or in your field of study, they did. When people doubted you because of accusations levied against you, they stuck with you. And I want you to think about that person, visualize them, and be grateful. I want you to say thank you to them in your heart, in your body, and realize that it's the people behind the scenes that are not always looking for the spotlight that really make the difference when we try to do bold things, when we do bold things in the workplace, when we do bold things in our family life, changing bad habits. There are people out there, and we all have them, that they're always that quiet voice of encouragement. They never stop believing in you, and they carry you through the finish line. And I want us to think about those people right now, because those are the people that really change the world. Those are the ones that when 20 people said, no, your idea is not going to work. That technology, that'll never work. Oh, that new product, that'll never work. That one person says no, and they say, it will work. I know you can do it. And that carries you over. And that's what's so important. On A Neighbor's Choice, we are dealing with people who really change the game. I've been blessed and fortunate to be able to develop a very interesting Rolodex of thinkers who are changing science, changing technology, changing medicine, and they're just working hard, and they need people like you to help them get the word out about their message, because they're not in it for the spotlight. They're in it to actually solve big challenges, and that's what we need in this world. We don't need the same blame games. Oh, let's have Washington solve medicine. Let's have let's tax the rich more. Let's take from them so that we can try to feel better about ourselves. Those solutions are never going to be the key to solving our problems. So if you want to be a part of the discussion today, it's going to be jam-packed with all kinds of new insights. I can't wait for you to hear them. Call us at 407-916-5400. That's 407-916-5400. And I know also, at the same time, there are always those haters that they always tell you, I don't think you can make it. Or, and I know we can all think about someone right now. Maybe they're a boss. Maybe they're a manager at your job. And they're always kind of giving you a hard time and dumping extra hardships on your back. I know everyone's had those moments. Maybe you're in one right now. Or maybe it's someone that's just always a family member or someone who disagrees with you politically, and they're always calling you names and making you feel like you're not good enough or that something's wrong with you because you think differently. I want you to think of that bully. I want you to realize, put that bully's name on your lips right now and just say, I forgive you, blank. Say it with me. I forgive you, John. I forgive you, Sarah. I forgive you, whoever that is. I just forgive you because I have the power to, and because the universe has given me all authority to do that. God has created a reality in which we can have freedom from fear, freedom from anger, freedom from self-doubt and mental prisons of victimhood and all those kind of things that pollute our hearts with the media and all the noise we hear around us. But if we decide to choose to forgive these people, pardon them, because they don't know what they're doing. So right now, take this time with me. Pardon people who have come into your life and they were just motivated by fear or hurt or pain. Someone picked on them before. Someone told them they couldn't do it and they built it up and they want to channel that energy onto you. Just pardon them. Because when you do that, it gives you power. It gives you courage. It gives you the strength you need to solve things that you didn't even know were possible. And so in the work I've done, I've been on the top pages here again, once again, Daily Caller and WorldNet Daily and Townhall, Finance, and all these different major publications around the world that are picking up my articles. And you can also go to my YouTube channel. If you type in A Neighbor's Choice, YouTube search for A Neighbor's Choice and subscribe to my channel. I've got interviews with some of the world-class intellectuals who are challenging bad ideas, big government, big business, and they're just rolling up their sleeves and facing old ideas and saying, no, we can do better than that. And so we're going to be talking to those people too. We don't need Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all. Look, I don't want Medicare when I'm an older person. I don't want it now either. I mean, if I'm trying to find a way that hopefully they'll let us opt out when I'm a senior myself, because I don't want the product that's on tap there. We don't need to spend trillions of dollars with one-size-fits-all monopoly-based medicine. That will never solve the problems. That's like dial-up internet for medical care. We're past that. That's slow. It's clunky. It won't work. We're moving to the future where we can have solutions using free market and skin in the game, where we can solve big problems like cancer and things for cents on the dollar, for pennies compared to the hundreds of thousands of dollars that the outdated government-regulated system provides for us now, for things like cancer, disease, diabetes, so forth. We don't need to be locked into those old ideas. We can solve them ourselves, folks. So just a second, you will find out how Alice Johnson was able to have a successful clemency because of President Trump. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski, News Radio 102.5 WFLA. And welcome back to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I am your host, as always, David Gornoski, and you can find my work at aneighborschoice.com. You can email me if you have a great idea you want to share with the world, or you have someone that's a victim of a nonviolent crime law that's put them in a bad situation in prison. You can email me at david@aneighborschoice.com. And my principle in all of my writing at all these top media sites around the world where I try to reach anybody on the left, on the right, independent, whoever, all over the world too. I just got a message from a good friend, Surat in India. He's a great fan of A Neighbor's Choice, and he's a great listener. And, you know, there's all kinds of people who they're going to have scapegoats. They're going to have their particular pet peeves. But one principle we can all come together around is that if there's no victim, then there should be no crime law against someone. If you have not used violence, if you're not stealing, you're not defrauding, you're not trying to use physical violence or any of that kind of thing, you should be left alone to exercise your freedom. That includes vices that we don't like. It includes bad speech we don't like. It includes bad habits we don't like. But that's the beauty of freedom. We allow people to work these things out and we come together with them. We can solve addictions. We can solve all kinds of problems as neighbors, not as enemies. Because when we use violence, it only creates more violence and brokenness. It destroys families. It hurts people. And so I'm so glad to speak right now with a hero, Amy Povah. She is the founder of Can-do Clemency.com. It's Can-do Foundation is what she's been her life work. Thanks for being on the show, Amy.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I was just so struck by, you know, I saw your work prior to this big story that came out with Alice Marie Johnson, but it just really, it crystallized for me the importance of what you're doing at the Can-do Foundation. You are dedicated to helping women and men who are in long prison sentences who they need to come home. They need to be with their family. And you have been at the forefront of putting together research and working with these family members to get petitions to get to the White House, and you've done it through previous administrations and now the current one, and you're dedicating your life to helping people find clemency so they can have freedom with their family.
Well, I received clemency from President Clinton. I was serving a 24-year sentence for a drug conspiracy case, and that's what I typically focus on because I was educated the hard way, which is learning about the conspiracy law after you've become a target. And I was a target of a federal probe that was looking into my estranged husband's. He had an MDMA operation that he had started when it was legal, but he kept manufacturing it in 2 foreign countries. And I was somewhat shielded from the big picture and had already left him. I moved to Los Angeles, and we had separated a little more than a year prior to his arrest. And what your listeners may not know is that the conspiracy law was broadened in 1988 so that if you do one small thing, even a legal action, like giving somebody a car ride or taking a message over the phone that seems benign, giving that message to somebody and then somehow a drug transaction occurs out of it, even if drugs weren't referenced in the message. It may be, tell your boyfriend to meet me at this hotel at this time in this location. In fact, I use that as a reference because my roommate received 17 and a half years just because she conveyed a message to her boyfriend, which was basically that, telling him to meet somebody at a hotel in Chicago, and it was an undercover narc that conveyed that message. And I was swept up in it because I ran around collecting money that I thought would be bail money because I had kept a friendship with my estranged husband, and after he was arrested, I was kind of perplexed about what was going on, and I did go to his aid. And long story short, because I collected some money and it wasn't all kosher, they said that I had ensnared myself in the conspiracy law, and I was looking at 20 to life. So very quickly, you can find yourself at the other end of an indictment, which is usually used as a blackmail tool. The conspiracy law and mandatory minimums are sort of an incentive that the prosecution uses to force you to cooperate with them and help them build a case or sometimes even go out and set up other people. So I would not do it. I refused their threats to become a working informant, and it took them about 2 years, but they indicted me, took me to Waco, Texas. I got a 24-year sentence for all the ecstasy that my then-husband had manufactured, and I served 9 years out of 24 before I received clemency from President Clinton. After I got out, I started the Can-do Foundation, and here we are today.
So why did you decide to not cooperate when they were trying to get you to go along as an informant?
Well, they introduced themselves to me when I pulled into my garage, and they rushed to my car with guns pulled, and they were screaming, and it was kind of chaotic. And this was before the big SWAT raids, so they were actually wearing their just like civilian clothes. They were in like blue jeans, and they were from Texas, so most of them had on cowboy boots. But I thought I was being robbed, and they ordered me out of the car. They flanked me, took me into the house, and there was about 10 people in my home ransacking it. And very quickly,
So what's going through your heart when that's happening? You're pulling up, there's all these people with guns.
Exactly. All I could think of was that somehow evil had manifested in my home. And it's so shocking that it's hard to process what you're seeing, because it's a lot of stimulus to be coming at you all at once. And they do that intentionally. They had apparently waited until they saw me leave. I went to a meeting because I could tell they'd been in my home, for hours, as long as I had been gone. And
everything
the
was
front door
ransacked?
was in the floor. To ransack it. And they had busted in the front door, so there was just a hole. And that's a strange thing to see when they were rushing me through my house, because we entered through the kitchen, and then they took me into the living room, and they had to get a chair and set it up straight because everything was upside down and ripped and torn, and it was just awful. And but I remember seeing a hole where my front door normally should have been, and you're just processing so much that I just shut down. I wasn't really interested in communicating with anybody who was capable of doing what I was witnessing.
So you were in a state of shock, and you just couldn't process it.
Right, yeah. And they started a process, which I now know is very common because I served time with so many women, and we all shared stories, and the stories were very similar in nature, that they have a way of kind of forcing you to, I liken it to driving a steer right into the slaughterhouse, and I'm sure they use a playbook where if you won't cooperate, they start implementing tactics, which is interviewing and harassing everybody you know, talking to my employer. I also had primetime promotions, and they went to I promoted two of the most popular nightclubs in Los Angeles, Tramp and China Club. And they went to the owners, and they were interrogating them and saying, why do you have this woman working for you? She's at the middle of a big drug conspiracy. She's under investigation. They implied that maybe I was moving drugs, and they were shocked and said, we've never heard anything like this, and that's not the case. But then they threatened them and said, we can make your life miserable. We can audit your books. And I also worked full-time for a guy who had a gas shutoff valve that shut off the gas to your home in the event of an earthquake here in California. I did the marketing for him. They made his life miserable, and
so they
found a little glitch in his taxes.
Wow! So they put a social vice grip on you where you're being isolated. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you're being ostracized from everybody you know, and then people don't want you to come around, and and so then they do forfeitures. They seized my car. There's two ways to do forfeitures. One is purchased with illicit proceeds, and the other way to forfeit property is to say used to facilitate a crime. And
in
much
this case,
later,
you were just married to the wrong person, and even an ex-husband at that. And
later, I got to see the forfeiture papers. Much later, they didn't serve me for another year or so. But it said confidential informant. So CI number 4 said that they had a conversation with my ex-husband in the car. No drugs were there, nothing was sold, and the only thing to get my car that was necessary was CI number 4, who you don't even know who CI confidential informant number 4 is, said they had a conversation about ecstasy in the car. That's all it said. And
so there's a lot of hearsay. There's a lot of, it's just a complete vice grip where they're trying to eliminate you socially as a pariah from everybody, including your family members, right?
Right, yeah. Well, they make life miserable for just about everyone. And then if you can't function, you get to the point where, I mean, they're trying to break you.
Wow.
And if you don't have transportation, especially in a city like Los Angeles, I eventually rented a car. And after a while, the rental company asked me to return it. And I asked why, and they said, well, the stickers are outdated. We need to put different stickers on the license plate, which wasn't true.
Wow.
By this time,
so you can't even rent a car.
Harassed.
You can't even rent a car. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Amy Povah. She's the founder of Can-do Clemency Foundation. She's at the heart of a lot of these clemency stories you're hearing. We'll be right back. We'll find out what it was like to go through this ordeal on A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm David Gornoski. We'll be right back on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. And welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm David Gornoski, the founder of A Neighbor's Choice. You can visit aneighborschoice.com. Type in my name all over Google. You'll see the articles all these different publications carry. My central theme is no victim, no crime, no matter what it is. If you haven't committed a violent act, you should be left alone. And today I'm joined with my friend Amy Povah. She is the founder of the Can-do Foundation, which is dedicated to clemency. They were one of the behind-the-scene heroes rallying public attention and White House attention for Alice Marie Johnson, who you saw she was pardoned in that beautiful scene where she was able to run. She looked both ways before she ran across the street, but when she was free, she ran to her family, and that was such a beautiful thing. President Trump was really touched by that story, and I'm so glad Amy was able to help her and many others like her, because there's so many people out there who are in the belly of the prison system, and they really are beautiful people, wonderful stories, and they need to be with their children. There's nothing like a mother's love or a father's love for a child, and they need to have that. We have a precious time on this earth. It goes by like that. It just goes so quick on this beautiful planet, and we deserve the right to be able to have our time with our families the way God intended. So if you want to be a part of the discussion here with Amy, it's 407-916-5400. And Amy, you were telling me about your situation you experienced where you were roped into this massive drug operation against your ex-husband. And so you were telling us about how it was even hard for you to even rent a car where you were.
Right. Well, I think we got the picture, so right. I don't need to dwell on
Sure.
that. But what people need to understand is that the people who get 10 to 20 to life are people who went to trial, who exercised their Sixth Amendment right to a trial. The mandatory minimums that they implemented in the 80s, they only apply to people who say no to the government, I will not work with you, to help convict other people. And there's a misconception where people ask, why wouldn't you cooperate? Because they assume cooperation means just saying you're guilty and admitting what you did. That is not how you get a plea bargain. You have to give substantial assistance in the form of assisting the prosecution in convicting additional people. And there's a legal term. I can point people to it. It's mandatory. So I just wasn't interested in doing that. I don't think that that's ever what our founding fathers had in mind. And I now have a team of wonderful people who work with me. I have to give a shout-out to Enrica Caldwell, Cheryl Ward, and Patricia Williams. Everybody that works with Can-do are impacted people. They're either formerly incarcerated or they're a family member of somebody who's in prison. And we started the Guardian Angel program to assign people to someone in prison, because we now have so many people reaching out to us who need help, and so many people on our website. I can't continue to do the one-on-one with everybody the way I used to. So we're growing, and we feel blessed and honored that Alice Marie Johnson received clemency. She should have gotten it under President Obama, but many wonderful, some of the best cases were passed over by that administration because they let the Department of Justice make the final decision as to which cases would go to the White House. President Trump has signaled that he understands that system over there is broken, and that's why a lot of people are actually sending their petitions directly to the White House, and he's asking for lists of worthy candidates.
And that's how it's fascinating how, he feels like he's getting a raw deal where he sees people being intruded in every which way with the DOJ. And so that has been kind of a blessing in disguise for the public, because it's awakened the most powerful executive in the government today to the need to really look at these cases of nonviolent people seriously without relying on the Department of Justice to handle all this.
Right. And we hope that because there is some awareness that it's going to bear fruit. Of course, the jury's out. We don't really know. But I also have to mention Maureen Grisey is the head of our Guardian Angel program, and we work very, very hard to get some exposure for the additional people on our website who are just like Alice, who are serving, many of them are serving life sentences, and they were just one spoke inside a larger conspiracy. And again, you maybe just did one thing, but yet you're held responsible for everything that the kingpin did. And most of the cases that we're focused on, the guilty are already home because they cut deals. It's easier to get somebody who's extremely involved in the drug trade to cut a deal than somebody who's a very small minor participant, or a lot of the time women won't cooperate against a spouse or loved one. And so we're just trying our best to get some more of these cases the exposure that they deserve, because if not for Kim Kardashian seeing Alice's case, she would probably still be in prison. I mean, we were doing all that we could to try to lift her voice up and Skype her into universities and Google and YouTube, but connecting her with the Mike video op-ed that was on Twitter caught Kim's attention, and we need a lot more people stepping up to help with these additional people who are perfect candidates as well.
And we're speaking here with Amy Povah. She is the founder of Can-do Foundation. CanDoClemency.com is her website if you want to read more about how you can help get petitions signed and delivered to the White House and make some noise, because it sounds like they are really inspired to do more beautiful acts of clemency to restore families. And Amy, I wanted to go back because you went through a prison ordeal yourself, and thankfully you were able to get out earlier than the original sentence because of clemency. But can you just walk people through who've never been in that situation? It feels alien. It feels like something out there. What's it like to walk in, that first day when you've been convicted and you've got decades? What's it like to go into that prison situation?
Well, for one, people really need to listen to the sentence, the number of years. And what was frustrating for me when I was in prison is it felt like there was a huge disconnect with the public feeling as if you committed a crime, like don't commit the crime if you can't serve the time, and these stupid little cliche sound bites that to me are very snarky and disconnected from any form of reality. 5 years maximum. I just don't understand why anybody should serve more than that for, I agree with you that if there's no victim, there should be no crime altogether.
Right.
But even under the current process, if we really are rehabilitating people, you're not a better person at 6 years or 7 years or 8 years or 10 or 20 walking out that door. In fact, you're less employable. You're not up to the minute with technology. And walking in with a 24-year sentence or some of these people that are serving life, I can promise you it's hard to breathe because you're carrying the weight of decades. And there were days when I would kind of gasp for air because you can't envision your out date.
Right. And
you don't know whether you're getting out. And the day I walked on the compound, there was a lot of tension because there had been, a squabble, and it was apparently a lover's quarrel, but somebody had their face cut. And so I literally thought, oh, my God, this is just like the movies. This is a nightmare. I'm not going to survive this. In reality, that was actually a very, very rare situation. In fact, nothing like that ever happened in the 9 years that I was there again. But it did affect me and traumatize me in that moment. And then as I settled in, I realized most of the women were just like me, which is why when I got out, I first only focused on women, where they just had minor participation or peripheral contact or exposure due to their relationship, and they were serving 20 to life. We don't arrest the wife of a murderer or the wife of other types of crimes and throw them in prison, but yet in these drug crimes, they sweep up not only mothers, but sometimes grandmothers and quite a few relatives or siblings just because of your, peripheral involvement.
Right, but you're in this situation, and a lot of times I think there's a big case for PTSD. I think it happens in prison, going through that trauma. I know my friends who are have worked in correction officer positions have told me about how nonviolent people, they can't be completely separated from violence, and so they have to be put in this law of the jungle situation. I know there are some low security ones that are not as bad, but just the whole principle of it all is just rotten to the core, and it's time for humans to really look at their neighbor and love them as they love themselves. Would you do that to your neighbor? Would you do that to a family member? No, you wouldn't. And here we have flesh and blood people like Alice Johnson, just to see her joy. It captured everything for thousands and thousands of people, just like Alice, who they just want to see sunshine. They just want to be with their family. And, we used to have an alcohol prohibition, and it killed thousands and thousands of people, and it wrecked people's lives. It left women without their husbands, and it left people separated from their children, which caused more violence and more. I mean, when they ended the drug prohibition back in the 1930s, what happened was the homicide rate plunged down. It plunged massively. So we saw that it didn't work then, but somehow we think, if there's all these other things, we can just keep trying the same insane idea like using violence. But Amy, you persevered and you stood your ground, and now you were able to get your own cellmate out, right?
Yeah, she received clemency at the end of Clinton's term. I wrote her petition while we were roommates, and then I did my best to advocate for her when I got out, and she got out on his last day. But, I want people to understand that there are people in prison who are serving life sentences for marijuana. And we also have some women, Crystal Munoz and Diana Marquez. Diana's serving 30 years for pot, first offense. And Crystal is serving 20 years. But we also have, there's just so many women. LaShonda Hall and Nancy Furneaux is an elderly lady who has had a bout of cancer. She's got all kinds of illnesses. She's in her 60s. And we have them up on the website. Michelle West is a first-time offender in a drug conspiracy case, and she's already served 25 years. She has served a quarter of a century, and the whole case is built around a man that they gave the plea bargain to, who did murder somebody, and he never served a day for the murder. But he was given a deal that if he would testify against others, he would not have to serve a day. So the message there that I want your listeners to really understand is that the prosecution releases the bad guys back into society all day, every day. So people shouldn't get all wonky and nervous when they hear that some of us may go free or get clemency or have any concerns, because we're usually the low-hanging fruit, the least culpable, and most of us were in prison based solely on testimony, on the word of a co-conspirator that the prosecutor gave a deal to, who I promise you probably would not want to be your next-door neighbor, right, which is a tie-in to your show. But
well, Amy, you're a hero. Keep doing what you're doing. I know we're going to change history. We're going to send these old drug war ideas into the ash heap of history, because we know that it doesn't work. In our hearts, in our souls, we know we wouldn't do that to our family members, and thank God there's people like you out there on the front lines, and you're going to have success. I think Trump is going to go down, President Trump is going to go down as one of the most historical presidents in this issue. I think many more after him will set even beyond that, hopefully, because we're going to set a chain reaction of good neighborly care, that we would not do something to somebody else that we wouldn't have done to us. So thank you, Amy, for what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing more wonderful stories on the front lines of our news because of what you were helping do. Go to CanDoClemency.com. That's Can-do Clemency. I'm David Gornoski. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. We'll see you in just a second. Welcome to our final segment on A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm your host, David Gornoski. YouTube me, David Gornoski, or type in A Neighbor's Choice on YouTube or internet, and you'll find how to subscribe to see all these world-class interviews that we do each and every week. And my wonderful, I can't wait for this segment, it's my chief science advisor, Dr. Weiping Yu, theoretical physicist, and my go-to guy for rethinking outdated ideas of science. Thanks again for being on the show, Dr. Yu.
Thank you, David, for having me.
It's so great to see you again. And I really, I want to show the world the power of groupthink, and how if you rethink something like physics, how it has a downstream effect for other modes of thought, like medicine. And so I think, I was talking at the beginning of the show about how, there's this call for let's have trillions of dollars to spend, higher taxes, higher whatever, print more money. That'll hurt the poor, when we print money. And I said, we don't need that. I want a day, and I want it in this lifetime, where we can have solutions voluntarily funded with people rolling up their skin in the game, that they can solve big illnesses, even like cancer, which is a terrible blight on a lot of people's lives, and fear and pain and suffering. And so one time, you have really rethought a lot of groupthink ideas in physics. And so one time I remember I asked you, I said, I'm really motivated about this cancer issue. I've seen it affect my family members, and I see the suffering they go through. And I said, I can't stand the thought, if there's a new idea that we could research that would help us achieve remediation or help solve cancer. Now, I'm not a medical expert, and neither are you. You're a physicist. But I said, if we rethink what an atom is, and you do that, then maybe we have a new insight if we rethink what our body is made out of at a physics level when it comes to energy. And so I asked you one time, I said, if your theory of physics is correct and your discovery is true, that every particle is a magnetic particle having both positive and negative charge.
Right.
I said, what does that mean? Is there any influence that would do for cancer? How would that affect what you would think about for cancer?
Good question. If my understanding about cancer versus cancer cell versus a normal cell, the normal cell is a closed, stabilized, called a magnetic neutral cell. Cancer cell is not fully closed. So that's why what happens? Not fully closed. So it's not magnetically stable. So that means not magnetically neutral. What happens? It will interact. I want to mention one thing. All the interactions at atom level or molecular level. It's all based on the magnetic force. So the reason cancer cell interact because it breaks the normal stabilized cell, becomes charged, magnetic charged cell. So that's how it interact. Here is what I believe antibiotics do. Antibiotic is a charged particle. So it can neutralize. When you neutralize that broken cancer cell, this cancer cell, you can stop cancer.
And you told me that one night. I said, wow, are you telling me ordinary antibiotics, things that are cost 5 cents that are already FDA approved, could be repackaged in a way that could help cancer? And you said yes. And I said, had you thought of that before you rethought what a particle was? And you said, I had never thought of that until I understood what a particle was.
That's conclusion from the theory. I said, well, if it's charged particle, so how antibiotics work with? Antibiotics, number one thing is it is charged. It can neutralize the other, a non-stabilized cell. And another thing about antibiotics, it's tested not strong enough, not to destroy health cell. So that's why I mentioned about it.
Right.
I think about the cancer.
People take antibiotics all day and they're not having
I think that's what antibiotics is the most effective drug right now. Wow. That's what I believe.
So, and now let me tell you folks, I researched this and I found a scientist all the way in England, one of the most world-class scientists in cancer research. And his name is Michael Assanti. I want you to look him up. And I want you to see if Dr. Yu's physics principles are played out, because he has found just that ordinary antibiotics can help cancer better than the conventional treatments. This is A Neighbor's Choice. Find out what more we'll have for you next week.